It's Don here from the board. Thank you very much for coming along and checking out another one of our videos. In this video, I'm going to be doing some more casting, and I will be creating, using my two molds here, the Movember 2017 keycap. Now, how this differs to what I did previously is that I'm going to be using my transparent resin, which has a much longer curing time, 24 hours or so, which means I do have a lot more time to work with to get out bubbles and so forth. Now, we've known that from my previous videos it takes quite a bit of time to set up the synths to actually do the casting, so I'm not going to torment everybody by having that, but instead, past this introduction section, I'm just going to record it as a separate video and I'll speed it up so it's much faster. Then I'll have a video that I'll attach to the end with my very simple editing skills to show off the actual caps once they're finished. What is slightly different in how I'm going to work today, of course, is that I'm still going to be casting, but I'm actually going to be doing some color shots, which may or may not be evident in the time sped up bit of the video. And one notable difference in how I work with my transparent resins is I use measuring cups and my scales because it's measured by weight, not by volume. So you would have seen that when I did my casting using the polyurethane, I had used pipettes because I was measuring by volume. It's a 1-to-1. However, the resin that I work with, which is transparent, it's actually by weight and it's a 2-to-1. So it's 2 part A, 1 part B. To help with that, because they're also slightly different in viscosity, I've just got old sauce bottles that I put it into, and I have them colored so I know which one's part A and which one's part B, and then I just squeeze them out by weight into the measuring cup on my grain scales. So it makes it nice and easy. And then of course I mix, color it, pour as per usual. So that's pretty much it for this intro section, and then we'll get straight into the actual time-lapse bit. And of course, don't forget, you should always have gloves, PPE, ventilation, so on and so forth, to make sure that whenever you're doing casting that you're going to be working safe. So hopefully we'll see you on the other side of this time-lapse video to come, and we can have a look at the caps that I made. Hooroo! Alright, so I've just finished doing the pours and I've cleaned up a little bit. Obviously there's still a few things to put away, and now we're going to wait about 24 hours or so before we attempt to demold these. So all I've done with these so far is I've done the black shot for the actual mustache, and while I was waiting for that to gel a little bit so it wasn't so runny, I then did the Vaseline and the coating. You may have seen when I was using this particular wood carving tool here, that I was actually scraping the stem just to sort of clean off any excess amount of the Vaseline that might have got on there, so that we're not going to get as loose a stem as we did possibly last time. That's pretty much it. And then you'll also have noticed that I only single mixed the black in here, but I double poured and mixed the clear because I wanted it to have a much better, I suppose, mixing since it had a higher volume in it. It did introduce more bubbles into it, obviously, but as you saw, I did have time to give it a bit of light tapping, and then I could also use the sharp probe to actually pull out some of the bubbles. I had measured 7.5 mils of resin, which you saw I had quite a bit of excess left over, but it's also good to have a bit of excess because you want your sprues to fill up, and as the resin cures, it's going to shrink and contract, so it's going to pull some of that resin back down and in. If you had a bare minimum amount of resin, you may actually find that your cast in shrinkage might end up with divots where the sprues are because it didn't actually have enough resin to pull down into it. So we're going to cut it there, and the next part of the video hopefully will be coming back in 24 hours and popping these out, seeing if we can actually get the stems out, and just checking how the overall look and appearance of these guys are. See you soon. Okay, so we're back. It's been about 24 hours or so. There's a very large vehicle going by, and it's gone. And leading up to this, I did a pour. I had a time lapse of that pour to actually cast 2 of the Movember keycaps using the synth, both the 1.2 and the 2.0. And here they are underneath, still sitting inside their molds. What I've done, of course, is I've gone and got the correct Allen keys to actually fit between the two, because as I had discovered in my review, the old 1.2, that size Allen key does actually not fit inside the stem of the 2.0. So you do have to advance down to a smaller size. Thankfully, when I did the previous cast, it wasn't an issue because these Allen keys were actually strong enough to allow me to pull these stems out. So we're going to have a crack at that, see what comes out. Obviously these have also cured up, so I can stack them to just put them out of the way, out of little prying hands. And then I've just got the small flat blade from the wood cutting tool that I use to clean up on the inside of the stem as well. So let's give it a try. Are you going to sit and behave while Daddy pops these things out? Alright, just going to put that through the bar and see if it'll come out cleanly. Alright, there's one. Came out with a little bit of force, but it wasn't too bad. Just bounced a little bit. Nothing major. And if I have a look, the crucifix looks alright. Although I did break my nail. Awesome. That's alright. Fix up my nail later. Let's try and get that into focus. So you can kind of just see the crucifix there. And, ow, that really hurt. Let's try number 2. See if this one comes out any easier or worse, and if I'm going to break another nail or not. And pop. So that came out a little bit easier. At least it didn't go flying, and it didn't take a chunk of my thumbnail with it. So let's just clean that off a little bit, and then can take some of that excess off there as well, so it's not so slippery. Okay, so they feel pretty firm in regards to the actual resin that's sitting on the top, so it's pretty cured. I'm not going to be too concerned about it being soft when I demold this. And let's have a look. So 2.0 with the aluminium anodized. Now I did have somebody from the Australian Met Keys Discord tell me that they'd managed to scratch their aluminium one while they were using metal tools to sculpt on it. So it is something just to be a bit aware of when you do work with it. I haven't had scratching on it, but I don't work that hard with my tools anyway. So that's how it turned out. Now, the clear resin's actually been relatively clearish in that you can still see the crucifix underneath it, and you can see the color of the synth below, which is pretty cool. What are you trying to do? You're not allowed to touch them. Even though Vaseline's probably not going to hurt you. And then that's demold from the 1.0. Oh, it's got a bit more adhesion. There we go. Hasn't taken any chunks of the mold with it that I can tell. And it looks pretty good. Let that come up to focus. There we go. So once again, you can also see the crucifix, and through the clear resin you can see the actual cap underneath. Pretty cool. Now let's clean off the insides. So I'm just gonna, I was gonna break off those, but I think I'll leave that for the moment. You're looking so hard, huh? You're trying to see what Daddy's doing. Hey, let's clean that off. Cut that. Cut that. Alrighty. So I can break those bits of resin off. And it lifts up and out just like that. So now I've just got mostly clean crucifix, but I am just going to give it sort of a light finish inside with the tool, just to make sure the edges aren't going to catch on the synth when I pop it out in a moment. Okay. What are you doing? Touching Dad's molds? Alright, now going to try and find an edge that I can get in to cut the sprues. Let's cut the sprue. Cut the sprue. Okay, they've all been separated from the base, and look at that, comes off nice and clean. There we go, and the underside of that, at least from the 1.0, it's a bit rough because of obviously the Vaseline on the surface. You can see the crucifix there. There's a couple of bubbles, but they haven't really broken the surface too bad. And once that gets cleaned up, a bit of light sanding, that should, hey, what are you doing? Don't touch these and put them in your mouth. Then it should turn out all right. So that's the first of the MERVs. Now let's have a look at the second of the MERV with the 2.0. So I'm going to trim that out. I can hear it crunching as I do this, so that crunching sound does obviously mean that the metal and the anodize is scratching, which unfortunately kind of correlates with what our friend in the Discord said. So let's see, is that going to lift? That lifted out all right. I do wish they had made it still in the stainless. It is a preference, obviously. Does it affect its performance? Not really, but its longevity, maybe. And obviously confidence in being able to work with metal tools nicer, I guess. So I've just cleaned that up, and if I hold that up to the camera as well, let it come into play, you can see I got maybe a couple of bubbles there. But that cleaned up all right, and I can't wiggle it out, so obviously the sprues are actually holding it in place. So I'm just going to have to cut the sprues like I did with the 1.2. On an edge, clip, clip, clip. There we go. You're watching so intently, aren't you? You're getting bored now. Hopefully Daddy's viewers aren't getting too bored. Okay, and then it comes off nice and easy, just like the other one did. Just going to give that a little bit of a wipe. And let's have a look at how this one did on the bottom. So once again, it's got a bit of a rough surface because of the Vaseline treatment as opposed to the sprayed surface. You can see a couple of bubbles, nothing too major. What you'll notice is my finger holding is actually deforming that top wall. That's kind of expected because while it's cured, the resin's actually still quite soft. Now if I let go of it, it actually goes back to where it was before, simply because it's got a bit of elastic behavior. Over the next day or two, it will actually fully cure up and harden. And when that's complete, that's when I'll actually give it a bit of a sand and clean up as well. Now, two distinct, well, not two distinct issues, but they're not really issues. First of all, we can see if we do this comparison again, like we did with the with the white cast that I did the other day. Oh, you want to get down? The 1.2 versus the 2, so 1.2 on the left and the 2 on the right, the wall thickness is actually different. It is actually significantly different, very noticeably different, if that'll come into focus. So if I line them up, you'll see it's probably about maybe 2/3 the thickness with the newer one. And while the camera's not really showing it, that arc line from the groove here in the actual 2.0 that is designed to help hold your crafting medium, if that'll actually come into focus. Maybe it's trying to focus underneath it. There we go. So that arc line is also showing up on my cast. I don't know how that would be got around with, or if it's really an issue. It's not really an issue if your cast covers that up, or if you're using a opaque resin, but obviously if you're using a clear resin and you don't have a feature above it, it might shine and show through. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with the results. So there we go, the first of the Movember 2017 keycaps, which I will be producing more of, obviously, hopefully in different color combos and stuff like that. And then I'll have them available for fundraising for Movember later this year. Obviously with her around, I don't have as much time to be able to actually get casting done, since I have to lock her out of the space so she doesn't stick her fingers in everything. And I've also seemed to have misplaced where I had some more resin. I've only got a little bit left in those squeezy bottles, so I'm not sure where the other bottles went. If I can't find them, I guess I'll just have to get some more, which may delay me a little bit in my casting. We'll see how we go. So that's it. Thanks very much for checking out this casting video. I hope you enjoyed it and you got to see just what the process is like. Now you have to remember, these were cast as gravity casts only, not pressure pot casted, which means they're not water clear. They're not, you know, free of micro bubbles and everything else. So I don't get as beautiful results compared to, say, like Bus Gamer and some of the other guys out there, because they do use pressure setups. So if you don't have that kind of funding to start with, just be aware of that if you're using clear resins, because you won't necessarily get that clear effect. But gravity casting using opaque resins turn out fantastic. So, but of course, ideally if you had the money, if you had the space, had the resources, then pressure casting would give you significantly better results. Rightio, now just to clean up the rest of this, find a safe place for these guys to fully cure out without her getting into it. And then we'll just keep on rolling along. So thanks very much for coming along, of course. If you like this video, please hit like. More than happy to read and reply to any of your comments you want to leave below. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, I would also love you if you can come along and subscribe and join us on our continuing mechanical keyboard journey. So, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.